Hello from the Connection Audit. We're your hosts, Kirsten and Blake.
Today we're asking a question that sits right at the uncomfortable edge of modern connection. What happens when someone uses romance, intimacy, desire, or emotional trust, not to build connection, but to extract something from you?
Because romance fraud is often talked about as though it only happens to people who are naive, lonely, careless, or too trusting. That is not only unfair, it is dangerously wrong.
The reality is that this kind of harm targets trust, not intelligence. It can begin with warmth, attention, shared values, sexual chemistry, vulnerability, future plans, or the feeling that finally someone gets you.
So this episode is an audit of romance fraud, scam risk, and the quiet warning signs that can appear in dating, E&M, swinging, and other intimate spaces. Not to make people suspicious of everyone, not to shame anyone who has been caught in it, but to understand the pattern before the pattern understands us. Because better connection rarely comes from more noise, more speed, or more access. It comes from more context, more discernment, and safer ways of relating.
So let's get into it. When does connection become extraction?
This is the Connection Audit.
To truly start this audit, I think we have to fundamentally dismantle the way our culture views romance and fraud.
Yeah.
Because we carry around this incredibly outdated, almost cartoonish mental model of what a scam looks like.
Right, like the badly written email from a supposed prince.
Spot on. For years, the narrative has been that fraud is obvious, that it's a bizarre request from a completely blank profile. We've basically been conditioned to believe that exploitation is loud, that it's easily detectable.
And because of that conditioning, society sort of tells us that if you get caught up in something like this, well, it is an individual failing.
100%.
It's framed almost exclusively as a lack of intelligence or, a lack of street smarts. But what we're seeing today shatters that assumption entirely.
Absolutely.
If you are listening to this right now and you hold the belief that you are simply too smart to be manipulated, that is the very blind spot these syndicates are looking for.
That's the pattern, right? We have to ground the reality of what we are facing in the modern digital landscape. If we look at the consensus from the 2026 UNODC Interpol Global Fraud Summit in Vienna, the shift in perspective was monumental.
Yeah, and terrifying, frankly.
Really terrifying. Romance fraud is no longer viewed by law enforcement as a collection of isolated consumer mistakes. It is industrialized, transnational, organized crime.
I want to really linger on that word, industrialized, because I don't think most of us grasp what that actually means in this context.
Right.
We aren't talking about a lone individual sitting in a dark room trying to trick someone out of a few pounds.
No, not at all.
We're talking about syndicates operating massive scam centers. I mean, these places have corporate structures, they have human resources departments.
They do.
They have daily performance targets, morning briefings, and highly refined conversational scripts that are constantly updated based on live data analysis.
That is the reality. It operates with the chilling efficiency of a multinational corporation. And the scale of it is almost difficult to hold in your mind.
It really is.
The Global Anti-Scam Alliance estimates global organized fraud losses at an astonishing 340 billion pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, that is 442 billion US dollars. And in the UK alone, we are seeing over 106 million pounds reported in romance fraud.
And we really must emphasize the word reported there.
Absolutely.
Because the shame that surrounds this experience means the actual figure, the money quietly draining out of ordinary people's accounts, is significantly higher.
It is staggering. Knowing those figures, well, it makes you realize how insidious the myth of the naive victim truly is.
100%.
If we keep telling ourselves that only gullible people get scammed, we are doing two very dangerous things. First, we are creating a false sense of security for ourselves.
Right.
And second, we are heavily stigmatizing the people who have been harmed, forcing them into silence.
Yeah, it isolates them completely.
It does. The truth is that modern fraudsters are incredibly patient. They are emotionally literate. They are sexually plausible. They present themselves as completely aligned with your personal values.
They're weaponizing human psychology.
Spot on. They are not targeting your intellect. They are bypassing it entirely to target your empathy, your attachment systems, and, well, your deeply human desire to be seen and understood.
Right, because they use AI-generated responses to maintain the perfect tone.
Absolutely.
They use sophisticated software to manage multiple personas, and they follow highly rehearsed pathways designed to bypass your natural skepticism.
That's the pattern, right?
But, I mean, if I'm entirely honest, hearing all of this laid out so starkly, it provokes a really visceral reaction in me.
How so?
Well, If the threat is this severe, and if these criminal networks are this sophisticated and well-resourced, my instinct isn't just to be slightly more careful. My instinct is to entirely opt
No,
out.
to just shut it all down.
Yeah, it makes the whole landscape of modern connection feel poisoned. If the charming, attentive person on the other end of the app might actually be a syndicate testing a script on me, how can I ever lean into vulnerability?
It's a completely fair question.
It feels like the only logical response is a complete fortress mentality. Just pull up the drawbridge, delete the apps, and trust absolutely no one.
I mean, that is such a natural protective reflex. When faced with an industrialized threat, the human brain naturally wants to build an industrialized wall.
Yeah,
But here is the critical flaw in the fortress mentality. It kills warmth.
right.
If you treat every conversation as dangerous, if platforms treat every single user as a potential threat by default, genuine connection dies of starvation. You end up safe, but you end up entirely isolated.
Which defeats the whole purpose of connecting in the first place.
Oh, absolutely. The core tension we are auditing in this episode is the delicate balance between friction and connection.
Because if you put up a wall so high that no one can get over it, you might successfully keep the fraudsters out, but you are also completely walled off from genuine affection.
100%.
You're walled off from intimacy, community, and joy. The actual experience of trying to connect with another human being becomes miserable and exhausting. It becomes a constant interrogation rather than a shared experience.
Spot on. The goal here is not to remove all risk from human interaction, because that is impossible without removing the humanity from it.
Right.
The goal is to recognize the pattern of extraction so clearly that ordinary connection remains warm and fluid, but exploitation becomes incredibly difficult.
So we want the connection to flow naturally when things are healthy, but we want to introduce targeted friction the moment the behavior shifts from building genuine trust to extracting resources.
That distinction is everything. We aren't trying to stop people from falling in love or exploring their desires. We are trying to stop the extraction.
So how does that transition actually happen? How do these syndicates methodically build their profound trust before they initiate the extraction? Because they don't just ask for your savings on a Tuesday afternoon out of nowhere.
No, they don't. And this brings us to the psychological mechanism at the heart of modern romance fraud, which is a process called staged trust capture.
Staged trust capture.
Yeah. It is vital to understand that this is the deliberate, methodical building of emotional meaning, sometimes over weeks or months, long before any practical request is ever made.
Because if someone you just matched with asks you to pay their rent or invest in their crypto scheme on day one, your brain immediately flags it as a threat.
Absolutely. The answer is a simple, frictionless no.
But if they ask on day 90, after they have become the first person you message in the morning and the last person you speak to at night, well, the psychological equation changes entirely.
100%. By the time the request finally comes, the victim eventually complies because they genuinely believe they are protecting a relationship, not making a financial transaction.
Right. They believe they are helping a partner in a moment of crisis.
Spot on. The psychological groundwork has been laid so thoroughly and the emotional dependency built so carefully that reality testing is entirely suspended. The critical thinking part of the brain is essentially bypassed by the emotional center.
This is so crucial for us to understand. The experience feels like love.
It does.
It feels like destiny. It feels like finally being understood. It does not feel like theft until it is far too late.
That is the reality.
So we need to break down we need to break down precisely how they manufacture that feeling of destiny.
Yeah.
There is a specific 6-step manipulation pattern at play here. It is a formula.
It is.
And understanding this formula is the only way to dismantle it. So let's begin with the very first phase, which is accelerated intimacy.
Accelerated intimacy is the deliberate illusion of rapid closeness. It is designed to overwhelm your natural pacing and your normal boundaries.
How do they do that, practically speaking?
Well, fraudsters achieve this through intense, hyper-focused attention. We are talking about a barrage of communication that feels incredibly affirming. They use a technique called mirroring.
Okay, mirroring.
Yeah. Whatever you want out of life, they suddenly want too.
Right, it's like they become the perfect reflection of your own unmet needs. If you mention in passing that you are tired of the city and dream of a quiet life in the country, suddenly their life goal is a farmhouse.
100%.
If you express a desire for a passionate, adventurous lifestyle exploring consensual non-monogamy, they present themselves as the ultimate, experienced, open-minded partner you've been looking for.
That's the pattern, right? They gather data from your profile, your early conversations, and your social media, and they feed it back to you as shared destiny.
It's incredibly manipulative.
It is. And they often pair this mirroring with what we might call a safe man routine or a safe person routine. They are overly reassuring.
So they present themselves as harmless.
Absolutely. They might proactively share a fabricated story of their own past trauma, perhaps a betrayal by an ex-partner or a difficult childhood. And this is specifically to elicit your empathy. And making themselves vulnerable first, they trigger your natural instinct to care for them, which in turn makes you feel safe to open up about your own vulnerabilities.
It creates this intense, emotionally saturated environment. They engineer these emotional rescue narratives, either positioning themselves as your strong protector against a harsh world or asking you to be their safe harbor.
Spot on.
It feels incredibly potent. But a bond that intense needs to be isolated in order to be controlled. You can't have external reality poking holes in the fantasy.
It really can't.
Which brings us to the second phase of the pattern, which is plausible distance.
Yes. Plausible distance is essential to the staged trust capture. There must always be a perfectly reasonable, highly emotive excuse why physical reality testing cannot happen.
Right.
The relationship must remain digital to survive.
Because if you could just meet them for a coffee or stand next to them in a queue at the supermarket, the illusion would break.
100%.
You would notice the micro-expressions don't match, or the voice is different, or the vibe's just off. So the syndicate has to maintain the distance while keeping the emotional temperature boiling.
Absolutely. And the excuse for this distance is always structurally sound, but emotionally charged. It's designed to make you feel sympathetic rather than suspicious.
What kind of excuses are we talking about?
Well, the classic tropes exist for a reason. They are working on an oil rig, they are on a military deployment overseas, or they're dealing with a severe, protracted family crisis in another country.
Right.
Or they might claim to be on a long holiday that keeps getting tragically extended due to unforeseen emergencies.
And what we are seeing a lot, particularly in niche dating apps or lifestyle spaces, is the claim of extreme lifestyle discretion.
Yes, that's very common now.
They will say, I have a very high-profile job, or I'm in the middle of a complex divorce, so I cannot meet in public and I cannot do video calls.
Spot on.
They use the promise of future physical intimacy as a carrot while using their fabricated circumstances as the stick to keep you waiting.
That is the reality. It keeps you emotionally tethered to an avatar. You are investing your time and your heart into someone you cannot verify in the physical world.
And that enforced distance bleeds directly into the third step, which is arguably the most insidious because it preys on healthy boundaries.
It really does.
This is the weaponization of secrecy versus privacy.
This distinction is so important, especially when we talk about communities practicing ethical non-monogamy, swinging, or any lifestyle space where discretion is heavily valued.
Right, because in those communities, it is completely normal and healthy to be discreet. You might be protecting your career, your family, or simply your own peace of mind.
Absolutely. Privacy is a healthy, necessary boundary. You do not owe the world the details of your intimate life. You get to choose who has access to your romantic landscape.
Yeah.
Privacy is a boundary you set to protect yourself.
But secrecy is entirely different.
Spot on. Secrecy, in the context of staged trust capture, is a tool used by the fraudster to prevent you from reality testing the connection.
So they use it against you.
100%. They will actively encourage you to hide the relationship from your friends, your family, or your primary partner. They will use phrases like, let's keep this just between us for now. People wouldn't understand our special bond.
Or they might say, my situation is so sensitive, if anyone found out we were talking, it would ruin everything.
That's the pattern, right?
So privacy protects you, but secrecy protects the person trying to exploit you. They are intentionally severing your lifelines.
Absolutely.
If they can convince you to hide the relationship from your trusted circle, they are removing your ability to get an objective opinion. They are cutting you off from the friend who might listen to the story and say, hey, the way they're speaking to you sounds a bit concerning.
Right.
Or, why won't they just get on a quick video call?
That is the ultimate goal of step 3. It is emotional ring fencing. They want to be the sole voice of authority and comfort in your life regarding this relationship.
It's deeply isolating.
It is. And once you are isolated, emotionally invested, completely reliant on them for validation, and sworn to secrecy, the trap is fully set.
And this is when they trigger step 4, urgent extraction.
Yes. This is the turning point. Up until now, everything has been about building you up, making you feel special, making you feel needed. But step 4 is the emotional pressure cooker.
It must be terrifying to experience.
It is always characterized by a sudden, severe crisis or a rapidly expiring deadline. The slow, warm, consistent buildup of the intimacy phase is violently punctured by a spike of intense panic.
So you just flip a switch.
Absolutely. The fraudster manufactures a scenario designed to flood your system with cortisol. This triggers a fight-or-flight response that completely bypasses your logical reasoning.
What does that crisis typically look like in the real world? Like,
Yeah.
what are they actually saying happened?
It varies, but the underlying mechanics are the same. It might be a sudden notification that their bank account has been frozen while they are traveling, leaving them stranded and terrified.
Oh, wow.
It might be a fabricated medical emergency involving a dependent, like a child who suddenly needs surgery.
Right.
Often, it involves logistical nightmares like arbitrary customs fees required to release important parcels they're supposedly trying to send to you, or tools they desperately need to finish a lucrative contract so they can finally come home to you.
And we are also seeing this incredibly manipulative variation known as the romance plus investment script.
Yes, that is increasingly common.
This one is particularly devastating because it doesn't rely on a crisis. It relies on the future you've built together. It sounds something like, I care about our future together so much, and I want us to be secure. Let me show you how to trade crypto. I have insider knowledge, and we can build our dream life faster.
That's the pattern, right? It intertwines the financial extraction with the promise of a shared future. They make the act of sending money feel like an act of devotion to the relationship.
It's so twisted.
It is. And we must also confront the much darker reality within this extraction phase, which is sextortion.
Right. This is where the emotional manipulation crosses into severe psychological violence.
Absolutely. In sextortion, the trust built during the intimacy phase is weaponized. The fraudster encourages the victim to share explicit or highly compromising images, framing it as a natural progression of their intense digital romance.
Because you trust them by that point.
100%. But the moment those images are sent, the warmth vanishes. The fraudster immediately pivots to coercive threats. They demand money and threaten to release those images to the victim's family, employer, or social networks unless they pay.
It is absolute terror. You can clearly see how, when faced with that sudden manufactured urgency or that terrifying threat, a person who is deeply emotionally invested would react.
Without a doubt.
The adrenaline spikes. They want to solve the problem for the person they love. Or they're desperately trying to protect their own life from collapsing. So in that moment of panic, they comply. They send the funds. They pay the ransom.
Yes, they do.
But here is the psychological mystery that often confuses people looking from the outside. What happens after that first extraction? When the crisis supposedly passes, but then another one immediately pops up.
Right.
Why do people keep sending money, even when the rational part of their brain starts screaming that something is wrong? This brings us to the profound tragedy of step 5, which is shame lock-in.
Shame is undoubtedly the most powerful binding tool the fraudster has in their arsenal. Once a person has complied that first time, once they have wired the money, bought the crypto, or sent the compromising images, a profound psychological paralysis sets in.
It freezes them.
Absolutely. It is a devastating collision of two powerful forces, the sunk cost fallacy and deep emotional embarrassment.
Let's really look at the experience of that. You are standing there, and a creeping realization starts to wash over you. You begin to suspect that the person you've poured months of your life into, the person you've shared your deepest secrets with, and the person you've just sent a significant portion of your savings to, might not be real.
Yeah.
The human brain simply cannot process that level of betrayal and financial devastation all at once. The cognitive dissonance is too loud.
100%. Acknowledging the fraud means accepting a catastrophic emotional and financial loss. It means admitting to yourself that you have been fundamentally manipulated.
Which is incredibly hard to do.
Psychologically, it is often easier, at least in the short term, to double down. It is easier to desperately hope that the crisis is real and to send one more payment to fix it than to face the absolute grief and the crushing shame of having been deceived.
The shame literally locks them in place. They feel they cannot tell their friends or family because they anticipate judgment. They anticipate being asked, how could you be so stupid? And that anticipated judgment deepens the isolation we talked about in step 3. They are trapped in a silo of their own embarrassment, still tethered to the fraudster who is now alternating between comforting them and demanding more.
That is precisely the dynamic. The victim becomes frozen. And this extreme vulnerability, this state of being financially depleted and emotionally shattered, paves the way for the absolute cruelest stage of the entire process. Step 6. Recovery fraud.
This part of the pattern is truly heartbreaking. What we're seeing is that long after the fake relationship is finally dissolved, after the victim has accepted the loss and is sitting in the wreckage of this manipulation, they're targeted all over again.
Yes. And it is often the exact same criminal network or an affiliated syndicate that has purchased the victim's data.
They just recycle the targets.
Absolutely. They approach the victim with a completely new persona. They pose as a specialized asset recovery agency, a government task force, a law enforcement entity, or even a group of ethical hackers. They claim they have tracked down the scammers and can recover the lost money.
They prey on the victim's desperate need for restitution and justice.
Spot on. They offer a lifeline to someone who is drowning. But, of course, there is a catch.
There always is.
They require upfront fees for legal costs or software licensing or bribes to foreign officials to release the recovered funds.
Unbelievable.
And because the victim is so desperate to undo the shame of the original loss, they fall into the trap again, paying for a recovery that will never, ever happen.
It is a relentless, cyclical machine of exploitation. Now, it is crucial to understand that while this 6-step pattern, accelerated intimacy, plausible distance, secrecy, urgent extraction, shame lock-in, and recovery fraud is the universal architecture of the scam, it isn't applied blindly to everyone.
No, it is highly targeted.
These syndicates have vast amounts of data, and they tailor their scripts highly specifically. How do we see these behaviors adapt to target different demographics? Because the experience of a single woman navigating a mainstream dating app is going to look very different from a couple exploring consensual non-monogamy on a niche platform.
You are spot on. The approach is highly calibrated to the specific desires and vulnerabilities of the target cohort. Let's look at how this manifests for single women first.
Okay.
In these cases, the syndicates often target the desire for stability, emotional availability, and partnership. The fraudster plays the role of the highly communicative, emotionally evolved partner.
They say all the right things.
Absolutely. They engage in intense future planning very early on. They use those emotional rescue narratives we discussed, positioning themselves as a safe harbor after a string of bad dates.
They paint a picture of a shared life that feels inevitable. Yeah. And crucially, what we're seeing is a massive push to migrate the communication off the original platform very quickly.
Yes, very quickly.
They will say, I hate checking this app, let's just use WhatsApp, or let's move to Telegram, it feels more private.
Spot on. And they frame that migration as a milestone of intimacy. They make it feel like you are taking the next step in the relationship. But the reality is entirely operational. They are migrating the victim away from the dating platform safety controls, away from the moderator reviews, and away from the automated warning prompts that might trigger if they mention cryptocurrency or wire transfers. Once you are on an encrypted messaging app, you are in their territory.
Now contrast that carefully cultivated emotional slow burn with the pattern typically targeting single men. The mechanics shift significantly.
They do. When targeting single men, the approach often utilizes fake profiles that promise immediate physical access, uncomplicated intimacy, or high-status arrangements.
That's a faster pace.
100%. The script is less about long-term emotional stability and more about immediate gratification or exclusive opportunity. It might involve building confidence around an exclusive insider investment opportunity, playing on a desire for financial dominance.
Right.
But critically, this cohort sees a very high incidence of the explicit image escalation we touched on earlier. The fraudster, using highly convincing AI-generated imagery or stolen content, encourages the man to share intimate images of himself, rapidly escalating the sexual tension.
And then the trap snaps shut.
Absolutely. The moment the image is sent, it instantly pivots to pay to delete blackmail.
The psychological pivot there is whiplash-inducing. You go from feeling desired to feeling hunted in a matter of seconds.
It is incredibly brutal.
And then we have couples, perhaps those exploring ethical non-monogamy or swinging. The vulnerabilities in these spaces are entirely different, and the syndicates know exactly how to exploit them.
For couples, fraudsters often deploy sophisticated, fake single profiles, often presenting as the highly sought-after unicorn, a bisexual woman looking to join a couple.
Right. They know what people are looking for.
They understand the dynamics and desires of the community perfectly. They might propose private exclusive events and request upfront deposits for boutique hotels or private venue hires.
Because they know that in those communities, arranging private meets is standard practice.
That's the pattern, right? But even more psychologically damaging, these syndicates will use tactics specifically designed to isolate one partner from the other.
How do they do that?
They will exploit any microscopic existing insecurities, jealousies, or desires for secrecy within the relationship dynamic to create a wedge. They might message one partner saying, "You know, I feel a stronger connection with just you."
Oh, trying to start a side conversation.
100%. Trying to initiate a secret side conversation that violates the couple's agreed upon boundaries. This creates chaos and vulnerability that they can then exploit for extraction.
It is chilling how adaptable the exploitation is. It molds itself to whatever shape your desire takes. So if we take a step back and look at the whole picture, if we understand the industrialized culture of these syndicates and we deeply understand the behavioral mechanics of staged trust capture, we have to audit the solution.
Absolutely.
How do we actually solve this in the real world, in our daily lives? Because we established right at the beginning that a total fortress mentality, shutting ourselves away from the world, isn't a sustainable or happy answer.
The solution lies in designing safer connections through frameworks of targeted friction. If we look at advanced safety by design models, like the frameworks being pioneered by platforms such as the Blossom Society, the core operating principle they use is progressive trust.
Progressive trust, let's really explore that concept.
Yeah.
What does progressive trust look like in practice, both on a platform and in our own personal boundaries?
It means that human connection should be allowed to flow smoothly, with zero interruptions or barriers, when people are just talking, getting to know each other, sharing stories, and exploring shared interests.
Just no friction there.
Right. The environment should remain warm and welcoming. But the system architecture, and critically, our own internal personal boundaries, should immediately throw up high friction the absolute second the conversation pivots from connection to extraction.
It makes me think of a highly advanced fire door system in a large modern building. Most of the time, the hallways are completely open. You can walk freely from room to room. The experience is seamless. There is no friction at all. You don't even notice the architecture is there protecting you.
Right.
But the moment a specific identified hazard is detected, like smoke in a hallway, or in our conversational context, a sudden request for a crypto wallet, a demand for your national insurance number, or an urgent plea to move off the platform because of a supposed emergency, those heavy fire doors instantly slam shut.
That is a phenomenal analogy. The fire doors compartmentalize the risk. They don't trigger the sprinklers to ruin the entire building, and they don't lock everyone outside in the cold. They simply stop the hazard from spreading beyond that single corridor.
Yeah.
Targeted friction works the exact same way. It is designed to interrupt the automated, highly rehearsed scripts of the fraudster. It forces a hard pause. It forces a moment of reality testing for the user, breaking the spell of accelerated intimacy for just long enough to let logic back in the room.
So to make those fire doors work in our own lives, we can't just rely on the apps. We need to establish our own baseline rules of connection.
100%.
We need non-negotiable standards that we hold ourselves to, no matter how much we like the person we are talking to, no matter how perfect they seem, and no matter how urgent their crisis appears to be.
Absolutely. These baseline rules are the bedrock of personal safety in the digital age. They are not suggestions. They must be absolute firewalls.
What are those baseline rules?
They include no money changing hands under any circumstances with someone you have not verified in physical reality. No cryptocurrency transfers. No agreeing to learn about investments or trading platforms together. No purchasing gift cards to help them out of a bind.
And we need to include the logistical extractions, too. No receiving or forwarding parcels for someone.
Absolutely.
That is a classic money laundering and smuggling vector. No sharing sensitive identity documents like your passport, your driver's license, or your national insurance number, even if they claim they need it to book a flight to come see you.
Spot on. And crucially, tying back to our discussion on secrecy. No secrecy around urgent requests.
Right.
If someone is telling you that you must act right this second, and that you absolutely cannot tell your best friend or your partner what is happening, that is the heaviest fire door slamming shut. A genuine connection will never require you to bypass your own safety. It will never require you to bypass the transparency you share with your trusted circle.
If someone truly cares for you, they will welcome the fact that you are checking in with your support system, not demand that you hide from it.
100%.
I think we also need to address a massive cultural blind spot here, which ties directly into how we perceive safety online. And that is the absolute myth of verification. We see a blue tick or a verified badge on a dating profile or a social media account, and our brain immediately translates that visual symbol to mean, well, this person is safe and trustworthy.
This is perhaps one of the most critical misunderstandings in modern digital safety. Verification simply means that someone completed a mechanical process.
Usually it means they matched a live selfie to a government-issued identity document.
Well, that's it, precisely. It is an adult verification. It is a process verification. It is absolutely not a character verification.
That is the reality we have to accept. A verified profile does not guarantee good intentions. A person can have a perfectly legitimate passport, match their face to it flawlessly, get the blue tick, and still use that platform to orchestrate a highly sophisticated, emotionally devastating manipulation.
That's the pattern.
We have to stop outsourcing our intuition and our personal boundaries to platform badges. The badge just means they're a real human being who passed a technical check.
Yeah.
It does not mean they are a safe human being.
Absolutely. You cannot outsource your discernment. The platform can provide the warm environment and they can build in the fire doors, but you still have to pay attention to the smoke.
And when the smoke inevitably appears, when someone tries to run an extraction script on you, we need to completely overhaul how platforms, communities, and individuals respond. We need to talk deeply about shame-free reporting.
100%.
Because if a member of a community feels like they are going to be judged or blamed or met with skepticism, if they feel like the platform moderators or their own friends are going to say, well, you should have known better, they will never report the extraction attempt.
No, they won't.
They will just quietly carry the shame, and the fraudster will simply move on to the next target with their profile intact.
Spot on. The reporting process shouldn't feel like a criminal trial, where the victim has to provide absolute, undeniable proof of a crime just to be heard. A report should be treated primarily as a safety signal.
Platforms need to respond with automated scripts and human moderation that prioritize empathy.
Absolutely.
And we as individuals need to have internal dialogues with ourselves and with our friends when they confide in us that explicitly say, you are not in trouble. You are not to blame for being targeted by a sophisticated syndicate.
When someone musters the immense courage to report a concern, the response must protect their dignity above all else. It is about deeply understanding the duty of care. Platforms, and indeed our friends, when we bring these situations to them, can do a lot.
They can help preserve the evidence.
Yes, and they can help restrict contact by blocking profiles and building a digital wall between the victim and the fraudster.
But we also have to be brutally clear about the boundaries of that duty of care to manage expectations and prevent further trauma.
100%. A digital platform cannot recover money that has been sent to a decentralized crypto wallet. They simply do not have that power. They cannot investigate transnational crime syndicates in foreign jurisdictions like a police force or an intelligence agency.
Right.
And importantly, a dating app's moderation team cannot offer clinical psychological advice for the deep, complex trauma that staged trust capture inflicts on a person's ability to trust.
They can point you to the right resources. They can secure the immediate digital environment, but they cannot magically undo the extraction.
Absolutely, which is exactly why the education we are doing today, the deep awareness of the behavioral pattern, is so profoundly important. It is about stopping the extraction before the shame lock-in can even begin to take hold.
That's the pattern, right? It is entirely about empowering people to recognize the subtle architectural differences between a bridge being genuinely built for mutual connection and a trap being meticulously laid for extraction.
Spot on.
Before we wrap up this audit, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something to take with you into your own interactions. We've spent a lot of time talking about friction, about establishing fire doors, and about recognizing the mechanical steps of manipulation.
We have.
But the ultimate defense against this kind of sophisticated exploitation isn't just building a higher, thicker wall around yourself. It isn't about becoming hyper-vigilant and treating every new person like a suspect.
No.
The most powerful defense you have is actually sinking much deeper roots into your own reality and your own physical community.
100%.
Think about it. Extraction thrives in isolation. It absolutely requires secrecy to breathe. When we normalize bringing our connections into the light, when we talk openly and casually with our friends, our family, and our partners about the new people we are meeting online, secrecy loses all of its power.
It really does.
A fraudster's carefully crafted script often shatters the moment it is spoken aloud to a trusted friend who isn't currently under the spell of accelerated intimacy. Your friend can hear the manipulation because they aren't flooded with the dopamine of the romance.
That is the reality.
So don't just audit the people you connect with. Audit the strength of the community you stand in while you connect.
What a profound and vital way to frame it. To bring today's discussion to a close, let's summarize with a compassionate view of what we've covered and leave you with 3 practical, actionable takeaways.
We've explored how romance fraud is a sophisticated, industrialized harm that specifically targets your absolute best qualities: your trust, your empathy, your capacity for care, and your desire for connection. Being targeted is not a reflection of your intelligence.
Absolutely not.
We have mapped out the mechanics of staged trust capture, from the dizzying, manufactured highs of accelerated intimacy, through the weaponization of secrecy, down into the dark depths of the shame lock-in. And we've discussed how to implement targeted friction, those vital personal fire doors, to protect yourself without shutting out the warmth of genuine human contact.
Here are 3 takeaways to carry forward with you. Takeaway 1. Trust is a beautiful, essential, and necessary part of human connection. But genuine emotional fluency will never, ever require you to bypass your own safety, ignore your gut instincts, or send money to prove your affection. True connection naturally respects your boundaries. Extraction actively tries to dismantle them.
Takeaway 2. Learn and enforce the fundamental difference between privacy and secrecy. Discretion and privacy protect you, your lifestyle, and your peace of mind. Secrecy, especially when it is demanded urgently to isolate you from reality testing with your peers, protects the person trying to exploit you.
And takeaway 3. Verification confirms a process, not a person's character. A blue tick simply means they passed the technical identity check, nothing more. Never outsource your personal boundaries, your common sense, or your intuition to a platform's digital badge.
Thanks for listening. We hope we've helped you uncover a deeper understanding around connecting with other people and given you the courage to be honest with yourself, your partner, and those people you connect with. Our only ask is, if you know one person you feel would benefit from listening to our conversation, please point them in our direction. Let's start a conversation about how we can build better connections.
And if you have any questions, a theme, or a topic you'd like us to cover, please give us a like, leave a comment, and we'll get it scheduled into the running order.
Be kind to yourself.
Until next time, less scrolling, more soul.